Hey, what is up, my YouTubian subscribers? Secure here to do my review for RWBY Volume 5, Chapter 13, Downfall. Now, this is the penultimate episode of this volume. Next chapter is going to be the last chapter, so expect one more video after that where I do a year in review for RWBY Volume 5. Like, comment down below. On with the show. Now, first off, this episode is 15 minutes. That's way too short for what they needed to do in this episode. And next episode, I expected this episode and next episode to be about 20 minutes long a piece, if not 25, 30 minutes. They That's my biggest issue with this episode, actually, and I actually like a lot of what they did. Now, I'm still not a fan of the Raven plot twist. If you don't know, in Volume 5, Chapter 12, the Vault of the Spring Maiden, we learned that Vernal wasn't ever the Spring Maiden, that Raven was the Spring Maiden, and exactly what I said in that chapter, in that review, happened in this chapter. Basically, what's revealed in this chapter is that, basically Raven was about 30, give or take, somewhere between 29 and 31. Assuming, and again, this is assuming that she spent no time with Ozpin, and or that she was still working with Ozpin after leaving Yang with Tai Yang. So that's assuming that she was, again, it's a little too old for it's too old. She's too old, and plus Cinder pretty much confirms that the Spring Maiden did spend some time before being betrayed by Raven. So there's that issue. It's still a big fucking plot hole, no matter how you look at it. Okay. So basically, this chapter opens up with Jean still healing Weiss. Now, it's revealed that Jean isn't his semblance. What he's doing is essentially forcing his aura into it's Sakura's healing hand jutsu from Naruto. He's forcing his aura into Weiss and boosting her aura, and it's just pure aura. It's essentially pure aura. Nora is like, "Aren't you worried you're gonna run out?" And he's like, "No, Pyrrha once told me I have a lot of aura, so I trust her still." And then we move on to the Yang versus Mercury and Emerald fight. Now, this fight goes about RWBY's in there too, but this fight goes about nowhere. Like, it's a lot of standing around for the entire episode. We then cut over to Hazel. Now, Hazel overpowers Crow. He overpowers Crow, Ren, and Ozpin very, very easily. Apparently, he can blast electricity. Like, when he swings his fist, the electricity dust sends a wave of electricity out of his arms now too, as well as just amplifying his strength and speed. Now, from there, we have Nora. Basically, exactly what I said happened last. Exactly. I said Nora should have went in there. She's a lightning. She can absorb lightning. He can and become stronger. So every time Hazel hits her. But exactly what I said. Nora jumps in there. Hazel's too much for her. She grabs her by the head. He's yelling at Ozpin. He's like, "How many more innocent lives have to die for you? You're a monster." And as he's saying this, he's holding Nora and constantly shocking Nora, and eventually what happens is Nora gets so strong that she's able to overpower him. We then have Ozpin tell Nora that Hazel's semblance is essentially what happened in Deadpool. Ajax's dull nerves. He doesn't feel pain. And Nora, it's a poor delivery by Nora's voice actor, but Nora basically says, I don't need him to, I just need to break him. I don't need him to feel pain. I just need to break him." And then she swings, hits him, very similar to what happened with Crow, where Crow gets hit and he's like bent. Oh, that's the exact same thing happens with Hazel. He's bent over Megan Hill and gets sent flying. He flies through the building and lands in front of Adam. And Adam's like, "What's wrong?" And he's like, "None of your business." Pulls out 2 more dust crystals, fire dust. Oh my god. Now, in conjunction with actually enabling to fight for an extended period of time, it also allows him to inject the dust like that. Like, it would destroy anyone else's body, or it would be just too much pain for someone else to do. But because he doesn't feel pain, that's why he's able to do this. And then we have Blake. And It's just very like you have bad voice acting from Adam Torres's voice actor and bad lines for Blake's voice actor. But given what she's given, it's actually a really good scene. All basically, Blake stands out. She's like, "This isn't right. This isn't good for the faunus." And Adam laughs at her. Adam's like, "All this time I spent trying to capture you, and you deliver yourself to me, and alone." And then you hear Son, and he's like, "She's not alone." And then the Haven police force flies in. The group of faunus that Weiss, or not Weiss, that Blake acquired in the last in chapter 10 all appear. We have at least one. We have at least one faunus who's directly related. This is a faunus civil war. Essentially, we have one faunus who's directly related to one of the White Fang members. Um, Blake is able to. We then have an exchange where Blake and him, basically, it's a battle of ideologies. Blake says, "No, this isn't good for the faunus. You're not doing what's right for the faunus." And then Adam's like, "Yeah, no, you're wrong. This is what's right for the faunus." We then have him try to blow them. He blows. He's like, if I'm going down, everyone's going down with me. He pulls out the switch and blows them up. But Ilya. Basically, Blake has had Ilya going around finding the bombs and disarming them, and then we have Adam freak out completely. He charges. He does the exact same. Actually, it's a mirror of what happened with Yang when Yang charged him, and he was able to take advantage and slice off her arm. Exactly what happened. And he charges Blake. Blake uses her semblance to dodge out of the way, and then lands a wicked hook, knocks him to the ground, and he's like, "Just kill them all." And then we cut back into the Haven Academy, where we have basically using the distraction that the faunus just caused and the police force just caused. We have Ruby tell Yang to go. She runs. She's able to get past Emerald, because Emerald, as good as Emerald is, she's not Cinder's main fighting force. That's Mercury. Mercury grabs a hold of her arm, and Yang disattaches the arm, jumps into the vault, and then we cut away. We cut to Cinder versus Raven. Now, basically, what I said at the beginning of the episode is what happens here. Cinder and Raven have an exchange where they talk, where she's like, "Oh, you must have, the previous Spring Maiden must have trusted you a lot." We then have a quick scuffle where it ends when Raven's able to cut Cinder's grim arm. She's like, "You can't protect your arm. You can't use aura to protect that arm. You turned yourself into a monster for power." And then Cinder says, "Look who's talking." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" We then have an extended exchange between the two maidens, and it's really really good in terms of like, it's what I'd expect out of two huntsmen. My main issue is outside of a few moments where they use their powers, like they're using their. But here's my main issue. It confirms that basically what Raven's sword is it coats the and what it's basically what Weiss's dust, what Murdenster does, but on her blade. She coats her blade in dust, and she does that repeatedly throughout the fight. And yeah, I'm like, well, why does she even need dust? Like, why not just get us? Why is she using dust? But maybe the dust is amplified by her maiden powers. I don't know. But she's basically, they have an extended exchange. It's actually, what ends up happening is in one of the exchanges they do the what's called floating ball of maiden energy, and they hit one another, and that's enough to begin a cave, and it shakes all of Haven Academy essentially. We then have using that as her advantage. One stalagmite falls in front of Raven. Using that, she's able to use her grim arm to grab Raven by the throat and slam her into the wall. We then have Cinder begin to absorb the maiden power out of Raven. Raven smirks at Cinder, uses her ice, catches Cinder at the feet, freezes her in place, and Cinder has to let go of, because another much larger stalagmite is falling. Cinder has to dislodge her, stop absorbing the maiden power, and then Yeah. Then the exchange basically goes again. We have an extended exchange. We have a new song, which I think this is Cinder's death song. Essentially, it sounds like it's Cinder's death song in my opinion, because it sounds like it's Raven taunting Cinder as they're fighting. In my opinion, that's what I got out of the song. Or it could have a darker theme because if Cinder comes back. That being said, we then have an extended exchange between the two, where as stalagmites, as the whole of Haven's vault is falling in on itself, they're fighting on the falling debris. And it's actually really really good. Like mediocrity, and this is one fight I think me and mediocrity are gonna agree on, because not only is it fast and well choreographed, but it also uses the stretch and hyperextending what humans can do, stretch and squish and stretch animation style that mediocrity really really likes. I'm a fan of it when it's done like this. We then have the end of the fight. Basically, what happens is they clash with one another one more time. Cinder, they break apart, and she's like, if you were a little bit more clever, you'd watch your back. And we have what would be the last of Vernal's strength to shoot Cinder in the back. Cinder has to defend herself, and then that's it. She left herself open 1 second, and that's all Raven needed to end her. Raven catches her, shatters all the Grim Eye theories. No, she was just really really scarred on her eyes, on her one side of her face, and she begins to fall into the abyss. And as she falls into the abyss, we have Raven send a ball of ice and completely freeze her. And that's essentially how the chapter. And then she's like completely frozen over. Like, this isn't. It doesn't look like what it looks like. She froze her completely solid. There's a difference because you could still see color in Raven when Raven was frozen last chapter. This looks like Raven did. It looks like what Cinder did to Pyrrha, but with ice is what I'm getting at. It looks like she hit her and then froze her from the inside out and completely froze her. So eventually, when she hits the ground, she's gonna shatter. And unless here's my big worry, because actually I'll talk about this at the end of the review when I do my theories for the next chapter. Here's what we then have: Raven walk up to the vault, and as this is happening, in my mind I'm going no 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 no, because I'm still worried that Cinder's gonna recover. She's gonna melt the ice because her forte has been fire. So I would have preferred another element, like maybe had she injected her with stone and made her into stone or something. But so I'm still worried that eventually Cinder's gonna recover and kill Raven, because she opens up the vault, and as she opens up the vault, you hear Yang's shotgun gauntlets. You hear Yang, and what I'm thinking she was doing was going boom, 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 and slowing herself down as she fell down the elevator shaft. And then we have Yang and Raven meeting, and that's how the chapter ends. We have Yang standing there, one arm, standing in front of Cinder, or not Cinder, Raven, and that's how the chapter ends. Now, to me, this chapter was better than the last chapter. Like I said, there's still the massive freaking plot hole that a 30-year-old, but now we know she must have been older than 30, just based on the fact that Cinder says that though the former Spring Maiden needed to trust Raven a lot before she was murdered. Now, again, that's coming from Cinder, so an unreliable narrative, but like I said, we just don't know. And it is a massive plot hole no matter how you look at it. Now, my biggest fear is they made a very, very clear point to have Raven looking at Raven and Cinder meeting eyes as Cinder fell into the abyss. So my biggest worry is what's gonna happen is Raven gets both maiden powers, or Yang gets one of them. What I'm worried is gonna happen is that Yang gets one of the powers, because you can't have two of the maiden powers in you unless you're Cinder, because I don't know, she's we know she modified herself in more ways than one, so maybe she's more grim than they let on, so we don't know again how she was planning on absorbing both. But my biggest theory going into the next chapter is that when Cinder hits the ground, she shatters, she transfers her maiden power to Raven, and then Raven Raven can't handle it and transfers that power to Yang. Is what I'm worried is gonna happen in the next chapter. Now, is that a bad thing? No, I don't care. Like, it's not a bad. It's not bad. Like, it would make more sense than fucking Raven being the Spring Maiden. But that's beside the point. Actually, you know what? I just don't know. Like I said, I expected this chapter to have a little bit more exposition and a bit longer, but going into the next chapter, which is probably going to be about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, maybe half an hour, we got a lot to do. We still got to defeat Hazel, which apparently Nora can do. She's absorbed enough electricity that Hazel's strength and her strength and speed are countered by her strength and speed, so Nora can do it. We know that we now have Weiss fully up and at him, and with using Jean's aura to boost her own, she's able to summon the Lancer Grim pretty easily. We still have my thing is maybe even Emerald might get the Fall Maiden power as well. Emerald is there. It could be like, here's the thing. Because we know that because we know that she's thinking of Raven as she dies, we don't know we don't know enough about how the maiden powers will transfer. Like Crow said, and Crow is an unreliable narrator at this point. Crow said that only young women, and if she's thinking of an old hag or a man when she dies, the power will just go randomly. Well, we don't know if that's fucking true anymore, because Crow also said it was a young woman, and like I said, she's at least, I imagine, somewhere between 31 and 34 or 5 before she was able to before she built enough trust with the former Spring Maiden to kill her. So we just don't know, and that's my biggest issue. We don't know enough about the maiden powers. We don't know enough about how the transfer works. We don't know. And there's enough candidates currently around Haven that, and my biggest worry is that it will just go to someone random. Like, I don't want another Oscar Pine. I want them to begin to streamline the story, is essentially what I'm getting at. And while the chapter was good, the action scene was amazing. I think it's the best action scene since Tyrion versus Crow and Ranger. I think that the sense of speed was there, the sense of power was there for Huntsman. Again, I had issues with the fact that they didn't really fight like maidens. Like, not they were just fighting like really, really powerful huntsmen. And yeah, I don't know. The last chapter is gonna be really, really, like, it's this chapter I liked. I liked it a lot more than last chapter. Next chapter is gonna really, really hammer home what's happening, and I'm excited. I won't lie out and say I'm not excited. I think I'm really, really excited to see what they do next chapter, because they did a lot in this chapter that I like. The fact that we now know that Jean's semblance is something different. We still have that mystery. We still have the potential of Jean having some kind of really, really cool, really, really fancy semblance. Now, that brings back the whole he has polarity, but on the opposite spectrum of if Pierre was positive, he has negative polarity, but in the end it does the exact same thing as Pierre has. So we can still go with that. We can still go with Super Jean. We can just do a lot with that still. I like that the confrontation they didn't like. My biggest issue was the confrontation between Mercury and Emerald, and Ruby and Yang was really, really weird. There was a lot of times where the characters just stood still. Like, there was one 20-second exchange between Mercury, Emerald, Yang, Ruby, and Blake, where they're all looking at one another, and it's like, why aren't they attacking? Like, they like, you would think they would be fighting one another, but they're not, and it's just them looking. And the Bumblebee shippers are gonna take her going Blake as like, oh, she loves Blake. Like, the Bumblebee shippers are gonna be happy with that. I'm not, because I don't support Bumblebee. I don't support any ship right now anyways, outside of Ren and Nora, because Ren and Nora is like their flagship, literally. Yeah, it was a good chapter. I'm not excited because the last chapter was so weak. Like, I'm not pumped. I'm not super, super pumped. But it's an enjoyable chapter, and I'll probably like it a lot more when the volume ends and I can rewatch all of this in one sitting. But as it stands, it's a good chapter. I like it a lot. Securage, signing off.